Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, good morning, all. My name is Adrian, and I'm from Citron Technologies. Welcome to Citron's 10th webinar series. Today, we are going to talk about basic soldering. So, welcome to our Citron's webinar series. This is our 10th session. And welcome, guys. Today I'll be demonstrating some techniques for basic soldering, and I have all my props set up behind me, where I will also introduce you the basic equipment you need to start soldering. Okay, hi guys, good morning. Okay, I hope you can hear me well. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay, so people are coming in. Again, if you're new to Citron's webinar series, what we do basically is that we talk about digital making techniques, or even we sometimes create projects over the weekend for an hour or 40 minutes, especially on Saturday, 11 to 12 o'clock. Today, we are going to share with you on how you can start your soldering journey. If you are new to soldering, this is for you. If you're an experienced maker, you have done a lot of soldering, we welcome you to give us your advice to our beginners as well. Without wasting more time, let's get into the agenda for today. Some people came for the Mako Arcade. Mako Arcade, we are going to plan for our future sessions. All right. So, but thanks for joining today's session as well. I hope you learned something out of it. Okay. So stay with me until the end of this session, and I'll be sharing you of some of the tips and tricks that you can pass it down to your friends and to your students as well. Simple enough. Our agenda today is that I will talk about what is soldering. Again, if you are new to soldering, this is your chance to learn more on soldering. To be honest, I have been soldering for the past 8 years since I started my diploma in engineering, and I've been practicing soldering for so many years, and I wasn't expecting that I get to learn more in soldering. I'm serious, because there are so many techniques that you can actually perform in soldering. So all the techniques that I've been practicing throughout my college years are actually just the fundamental, and there are actually more advanced techniques that you can use in your usual practices when you are soldering. And there are many other tools that you can use to do your rework as well and to fix things. Okay, I will talk a bit on soldering, and then later on I will introduce to you some of the equipment that you need to perform soldering, basic soldering. And later on, there are of course safety measurements, safety that you have to take before you start soldering. All right, bear in mind that I've taught students as young as 7 to 8 years old on how to solder. And when it comes to safety, that's the main priority among for everyone who starts soldering, especially for younger children. You have to make sure that it's a safe environment for students to experience soldering. You don't want anyone to get burned, because soldering the lead iron is actually above 300 degrees Celsius, and you don't want any injuries to happen. And of course, I did manage scenarios where students get burned, and what you should perform, what you should do after someone gets burned from a soldering iron lead. All right, it's not pretty. You don't want that to happen, but you have to take precaution. Right, you have to take further measures before you even start soldering. Okay, by 11:10, I will talk a bit on how to perform basic soldering. I have my demo set up behind me, and then before I end my webinar, I will talk about how you should clean your soldering iron, how should you take care of a soldering iron. Okay, before I move to the back of my setup over here, I'm just gonna show you my simple soldering iron over here. So this is my soldering iron. I've been using it for 8 years now, and it's going to last me a lifetime. I have never changed my tip. This is original. It's just 20 ringgit over actually. This is there's no actual brand to this right? It's a China brand soldering iron, but it's been performing well because once you know how to take care of your soldering iron, you know how to clean the tip, it will last you a lifetime. This thing will last you a lifetime. But if you don't really take care of it, then of course you will see the tip going have corrosion. There are different kinds of issues with your soldering lead, and then in the end of the day, you have to change a new one. So again, soldering iron can last you a lifetime if you know how to take care of it. It's very cheap. And of course, there are industrial grade soldering irons that can cost up to 1,000 to 2,000 ringgit too. But today, I'm going to share with you on the kit that I'm going to use, which is like cost me, actually it's an entire kit lah. It's this kit over here. It comes with a lot of different components inside, everything that you need to start your soldering, and it's only like 60 ringgit over here. But the soldering iron I have already set up. It's I'm going to use that for our demo today. So what is soldering? There won't be a lot of slides today. I won't be doing a lot of talking, but I will do more on demonstrating to show you the actual soldering. So bear with me, this is just the only slides for today. What is soldering? Soldering is a process that joins different types of material or metals together by melting solder. Basically, you're melting metal. And in order to do that, you need very high temperature. Right? We're talking about 300 over degrees Celsius and around 800 plus Fahrenheit lah. So it's very dangerous when we are soldering. It's very hot. You don't want to touch the solder tip. Not advisable. And I believe some of you may have experienced burning yourself using us when you're soldering. And again, it's you have to take precaution of when you decided to start soldering. All right. So solder is a metal alloy, usually made of tin and lead. What I have over here is all right, my solder over here. So this is fully tin. The core is flux, so it's melted with hot iron. So there are many types of soldering lead. The soldering lead these days are usually lead free because lead is not. We don't advise you to inhale lead lah. All right. So most of the solders these days are lead free, and it comes with a core flux in the core in the center of this tin. So tin with core flux, it allows you to melt and solder easier. But of course, if you ask engineers, technicians, what's the advice? What's the best solder around there? Some of them may answer you lead. Lead is the best, still the best soldering material, solder, because it has a lower melting temperature. It can melt easier. It can stick easier. That's why it's more preferred. But of course, it's not healthy to inhale lead. So before you get a soldering, your solder, right, make sure that it's lead free lah. That's my advice. It's safer for students as well. The iron is heated to temperature above 300 degrees Celsius. I have to emphasize this again and again because, right, it's dangerous. You're dealing with something very hot and you have to be extra careful. All right. So moving on, what are the things that you need to begin your soldering journey? What you should have. Be frank, the first thing you need is a goggle, safety glasses to protect any smearing of solder. When you are soldering, you don't know what's going to pop or what's going to, because it's chemical reaction, you're applying heat on solder, you're applying heat on fluxes, you don't know what's going to spray in any direction. So it's recommended, but you should have a protective eyewear. I recommend you this simple plastic protective eye gear that you can get from DIY for around 2 ringgit. But if you are wearing spectacles, and that's good enough, right? You're protecting your eye. You don't want any foreign to fly into your eye, right? That's my point. And then, of course, you will need to have a protective mat. All right, you can have an anti-static mat or a silicone mat to protect the table that you are going to solder. One of the biggest issue that I see all the time, even back in high school when we do soldering in our KH class, is that you see solders left on the table or hot glue left on the table, and the table is wood, and then after that you burn a hole on the table, right? Because this is high temperature thing, and then you're gonna burn something if you don't look after you didn't place your tip properly. So it's recommended to have a proper solder mat or an anti-static mat or even a cutting board or a cutting mat, right? Just to protect the table that you are working on. And of course, you don't want anything to burn when you're working on it. And of course, you will need, right, solder holder, this holder. Okay, so you can place it there. Make sure it's there when you're soldering so that you don't leave it lying on the table everywhere. Again, so all these things, all these are just basics lah. You have to make sure that it's there before you start soldering. Don't start soldering when you don't have a holder for your soldering gun. You just leave it on the desk, and no one, and your friend comes over and he doesn't know this is on, and he go and touch on the tip. Then that's bad. All right, so make sure you have all this safety precaution before you start soldering. Okay, so I have talked enough on some of the safety. Let's get into what we really need to start our soldering. All right, I have a few of these. I have multiple cameras here that I've set up, and let me move another camera so that you can get a better view. Okay, give me one moment. Okay, I hope you can hear me. I hope you can still hear me. So, okay, over here I have my camera set up. So can you see? Can you see clearly? All right, great. So over here, I have some of the basic equipment that you need to begin soldering. First, you will need, okay, I'm gonna talk about the safety first. So this is the thing that I talk about. You will need your soldering tip, your soldering gun. Make sure that it's on the holder at all times when you're not using it. And then over here, I have my DIY fan just to, it's a mini exhaust just to remove the fumes. You don't want, even if this lead is lead free, the solder is lead free, you still don't want to inhale the flux, inhale whatever that evaporates into your lungs. So make sure you have a mini fan to blow away the fumes or to exhaust the fumes away, and avoid inhaling all these right, the gases. Usually what I do is I don't solder indoors, I solder outdoors so that it's easier. I can just blow it off when I solder. I don't put my face too near to the fumes. All right, and then I have my helping hand over here. Okay, you understand what is a helping hand, right? A helping hand is to help you grab your object. If you don't have a friend around that can help you grab an object, use a helping hand. Right, it doesn't get burned. It's safer, and it's very convenient. You really need this. And then over here, I have my brass wool for cleaning purposes, and also I have my sponge, wet sponge. Okay, I will talk about this sponge and brass wool more later at the end of the session where we need to clean our tip. And then I have my desoldering pump. Right, this is to remove solder, excessive solder, And last but not least, I have my flux over here, solder paste. Okay, this is important. You need this to solder, to get quality solder, all right, to get your solder stick onto your board. Okay, I will show you why this is important. I will do some comparison on with this and without this. And last but not least, solder wick. Okay, this is something that not everyone uses when they perform soldering. It's mainly used for people who do rework. They have to remove some components and they have to clean the board. Then they will use this. Solder wick is basically a wick of coppers to remove unwanted lead from your board. All right. I recently just started using this, but I don't do much reworking. But I'm just gonna show you how this works. So are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? If you're ready, I'm gonna zoom in. All right. Basically, I already heat up my soldering iron, and while I was explaining, my soldering iron is already hot lah. So this is my soldering iron. It's from Tusivo, and it has this variable temperature. I can change my temperature. All right, over here. I'm allowed to switch my temperature between 450 degrees Celsius to 200 degrees Celsius. But by default, it's recommended to use just 300. Um, Nothing too high, right? You don't want it to be too high because it starts to burn your components, but you don't want it to be too low because you'll be spending more time melting your solder or trying to stick something on top. Okay, let's look at the tip here on my solder lab over here. Because I left it on for a while now, you can see that the tip is not shiny anymore, right? It's not very shiny anymore. Before you start soldering, tip number 1, make sure you clean your soldering tip. I'm being extra careful right now because this is like 300 degrees Celsius and I don't want to burn myself. So, but tip number 1, clean your tip, clean your soldering iron before you start soldering. So what we do is, first step, we take some lead. Okay, place it back. Okay, over here I have some lead. All right, normally you just pull some, remove some, all right, and then hold it on your. Okay, if you are right-handed, make sure that right hand holds your soldering iron. Okay, if you're right-handed, right hand holds your soldering iron, and then left hand holds the solder lead this way. If you have, you don't need a very steady hand to do soldering. I have a friend, okay, I'm not sure if he's here, but I have a friend who have shaky hands. They always have their shaky hands, but when it comes to soldering, their hands is stable. It's very stable. Right? They don't shake that often. So first thing, again, I see most of you are coming in right now. First things first, clean your tip before you start soldering. Clean your tip. Clean your solder tip using solder lead. Again, you see I have my mat over here so that when I place my solder lead on top of this, on top of my tip, it will melt and it will drop. And at least it's not drop. It doesn't drop on my table. It drops on my mat, and I can remove it. I can scratch it off later. So again, melt it this way. All right, apply some solder and then use your sponge to clean it. Just rub it off on your sponge. You want it to be shiny, okay? You want your tip to be shiny. You want it to be thin shiny so that it means that it's clean. So the question is why you have to clean your tip before you start soldering. When your tip is clean, it allows heat to transfer easier right? The temperature will be able to transfer all the way to the end of the tip, and that's where you need to transfer your heat to your component or to your solder led. If it's oxidized, the temperature transfer rate is slower. It's slower, and you find it difficult to melt your solder, right? If you have this problem all the time, that's because the tip is already oxidized. So you need to remove that oxidized layer by applying solder on top. So right now I'm using my sponge, and my sponge is not soaky wet. Again, you don't want your sponge to be so wet that when you press it, there's still water coming out. Okay, soak your sponge. Make sure that it's not wet. When it's too wet, once you clean your solder gun on top of the sponge, the temperature will drop and then drop and increase. It's gonna cause corrosion very fast. So you don't want it to be too wet, and then you don't want smoke to come out. All right, just wet enough for you to clean the tip and remove unwanted um, objects from your lab. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see clearly, but okay, I consider that as a okay lah, right? It's not shiny yet. Of course, you have to repeat the process of melting, and cleaning. Melt, clean, and then you're ready. Okay, let's go ahead and just try to solder something right now. I have my helping hand over here. Your helping hand is supposed to help you hold your object. Oh, sorry. Your helping hand is supposed to help you hold your objects flat. You don't want your object to be placed like, all right, you don't want it to be placed slanting this way. Why? If you place it this way, when you solder at the top part, and if it's too hot, your lead is going to flow down. It's going to roll over to the bottom. So make sure that when you place on the helping hand, it's flat, even, so that it doesn't roll off, right? Your lead doesn't roll off. So I'm going to just apply some solder on this solder pad on this right side over here. The steps that I'm gonna take is very simple. Just have to remember that first things first, you don't put your lead first and then your solder gun enters. First things first, heat up your pad. Heat up where you want to apply solder on. So this is the place that I want to apply solder on. I'm just gonna, I hope you can see clearly. Heat it up, and then I move in, and then remove. You see it clearly? All right, I'm gonna do it again on top here. On top, the second, heat up, apply. You heat up, then only you apply. Heat up, apply. You don't apply and then you heat up. Okay, not that way, not the other way around. You heat up where you want to solder, and then you apply your solder lead. Now I want to stick a wire. I want to stick a wire on top of this pad. What should I do? Should I directly get my wire and place it on top and solder it this way? Is that correct? Apparently not. That's not how you do it. First things first, you have to tin this wire. So this copper over here, I have to make sure that there's a layer of tin on top of this wire. Then once I do that, when I place it on top, I just need to heat it up for my wire and my solder on my pad, and it will stick very nicely. Okay, so now I have to tin my wire, tin my copper on my wire here. So good thing my helping hand got two arms. So I'm going to hold it this way. So this one method is that you can apply some solder on top of a soldering iron first. Okay, this allows the temperature to spread evenly across your wire. But of course, when you do this, you have to be fast. You have to quickly go drop down to your wire. Why is that? When you apply solder, you see smokes coming out. Those are actually evaporated resins. The flux, it's evaporating very quickly. And you need that to help you stick your lead on top of this copper. If you don't have flux, it's very difficult to stick your lead on top of the copper. So again, apply some and then quickly right. You have to apply some layer on top of your copper wire. Okay, this is not a very good work, but once you do this, it can be for thick wire or thin wire. But if you're using multi-stranded wires, right, you have to do this so that your wires doesn't go like hairy, and then it's all neat and sturdy. So what I need to do now is I just need to slice it shorter, cut it shorter, and I can stick it on my solder pad here. Okay. So now there's some tin on top of this copper. I want to stick it on top of the solder pad here. So what I do, just heat it up, melt it, heat it up first, put it in down, and then let it cover up. Hold it for a few seconds and then let go. Right, that should stay. But of course, you can take a closer look and then decide whether you should do some rework on it, okay? Whether you want to fix it. Is it nice? Okay, this doesn't look very nice. The wire is quite exposed. It's not fully closed. The lead is not fully covered on top of the wire, and if you move it, it's going to be removed. It means that there's not enough solder on top here. You have to apply additional lead, additional solder. Eh, so I'm just gonna quickly apply some on my iron and then hold on to my wire and just melt it. Okay. Right. So this is how you solder. Again, I am not showing a very how to say, it's not very clear in detail, but my whole idea is that if you want to solder on top of your board, first things first, you have to apply solder on the pad and apply solder on your wire. Then only you join them together. You don't just empty here, and then put like that, apply. No, it doesn't work that way. It may stick, but that it may not stick well, it may not stick effectively. So apply some solder on top of the pad, apply some solder on top of a wire, then only you stick them together. Okay. All right. So while we are at it, I'm going to show you how to remove this. Okay, there are multiple ways to do it. First, you can use this desoldering pump. All right, this is for you to remove excessive lead. So what you're gonna do now is melt it. You can melt it and remove your wire. Yeah, well, the wire just drop off. And then melt the excessive lead and then just suck it up. Just remove the excessive solder. Okay. That's another way to do it. If you are working with ICs as in integrated circuit or small chips, right? and then you want to clear off all the solders on top. And by using, sometimes this may not work, right? This is not 100% effective, not all the time now, right? Sometimes it may not remove the lead at a specific area, or it may not remove 100% of the lead. So what you need to do is use a solder wick, right? This is copper. So what you have to do, place your wick on top of the area that you want to remove the excessive lead, and then heat up the copper like that. Just apply some heat on top. What this is going to do is that whatever remain on top of the solder on the pad, right, it will stick on top of this copper here. Okay, let's zoom in, take a closer look. So what I did is basically I heat up my solder wick, I press it on top of my pad, and then whatever remain on top of my board is going to stick on top of this solder wick. Of course, I have to heat it up. You see how I transfer everything from here to here. So right now my board looks almost like how I started just now. Almost. Okay, as it's clean already lah. So this is how you clean it by using solder wick. This is a very quick demonstration how you can use it. All right, next I am going to solder a resistor. I'm going to quickly solder a resistor. Place it through a hole. If you have to solder a lot of components, I recommend you to use masking tape to stick your components on top so that it doesn't move around. Use masking tape. When you solder components like resistor or LEDs, you have to make sure that the wire is facing upwards. You don't want it to face this way and then you solder it, because your lead tends to go towards where the lead is pointing, and you want it to point upwards and not sidewards. But in this case, I want to make sure my resistor stays in place. I'm going to bend one of the leg like this, and I'm going to leave the other straight upwards like this. Clip it. Okay, I hope you can see clearly. All right, it's been some time now. My soldering iron is slowly deoxidizing. Okay, you can see it's not that shiny anymore. It's not that shiny anymore, my soldering iron. So I will have to clean it. What you can do is I like to use flux lah. I like to use flux to clean my soldering iron. Right, this is one of the flux. Normally I will just apply a bit, and then wipe it on sponge. Right, I'm gonna wipe it quickly, and then you'll be able to see that it's very shiny. Okay, this is a quick method lah. Right, but a slower method is that you apply lead and then use the flux from the lead to clean your tip. Okay. All right, can you see? It's cleaner now. It's cleaner now. Let's start soldering. So again, I can apply heat first and enter my solder here by relying on the flux in my solder lead core to hope that it will stick on top. That's one way I can apply heat and then enter my lead. That's one way. But I'm going to show you another method because we don't have much time. I'm going to show you another method. I will use some flux. It's the same as what I used to clean my tip just now. I will apply some flux on top of the components here. So this is a toothpick. Pick up some of this paste and then apply on where I want to solder this way. So what it does is it allows the temperature to transfer quickly around it, and of course it will remove any oxidized area. It will deoxidize the area and allows my lead to flow on top of the components easily. Okay, let's watch. So you notice that my lead goes in first, and then my soldering iron goes in first, and then my lead goes in next. Right. So I know I don't have microscopic view, but let me try to get it for you. Okay. Basically, what the flux does is it allows my lead to flow down easier, and the temperature will be able to transfer easier to the lead, and it melts very easily, and it sits on top of the pack easily. Okay. So again, apply flux. What most of the people get the misconception is that, oh, you give me this solder paste, I'm going to take my lead and then just and then wash my lead. Yeah, it helps you to clean your lead, your tin. It helps you to clean your solder gun. But of course, to apply this, you can still apply this paste on top of your components to get a better results when you solder. Right. Okay, quickly solder this. I'm gonna trim off my wire so that you can see it clearly. Okay. As you can see that my resistor is not really fully entered my circuit board. Okay, this is a big no lah. Okay, so make sure that your component is fully entered into your board before you solder. I didn't make sure that just now. I should have used the masking tape to stick on top before I solder. So may need to resolder this, remove this, and push it back in, and then resolder it again. All right, so this is part of reworking. But again, this is the solder that you can see. All right, we don't have much time, but again, I need to emphasize that solder paste is, right, this flux is very useful when you solder a lot of pins, a lot of components, and you want to make sure that every lead applies well. Right, your solder sits well on top of your components. And sometimes, most of the times, you may face issues like why your solder lead refuse to join together with your components. Right, that is because you are trying to solder something that is on an oxidized surface. So by using this flux, it actually neutralizes the surface and allows you to solder it easier. Okay. So a few more hints that I want to share with you. Let me just quickly turn off. Okay, a few points that I would like to share. All right. First things first, when you start clean your tip, make sure you have a clean tip, transfer heat easier. Step 2, turn off whatever power you have when you plan to solder. Okay, these are just some of the things that I would like to highlight because we don't have much time. But check out this. This video is recorded so you can review this sheet again. When you want to solder, I have seen some people did this mistake before. They plug the battery in their circuit and then they use the soldering iron and go straight into their circuit. So that's very dangerous. You don't want your circuit to be powered on and then you put your soldering iron into your component. That's going to like blow up. Okay, so make sure your components are all turned off. All right, your circuit is off, no power flowing through before you do your soldering. Safety first goggles, no water around, and then cables. Cables is a must because usually people you see a lot of burn cables on your soldering gun. All right, your soldering gun, your wire is supposed to be very nicely, but people normally you will take the soldering gun and accidentally burn the cable on the soldering gun. Imagine what happens if you short it. It's going to explode, pop, and then it's going to trip your main supply. And then proper lighting. Yeah, you need proper lighting around your soldering area. If you don't have proper lighting, you may miss out something. And then encourage you to have magnifying glass as well. It helps you to see small details, especially when you solder two components side by side very near to each other. You want to make sure that there's no thin passing through the other side to cause shortage. This is how circuits short, because of small tiny little hairline of solder crossing from one pad to the other pad. It's going to cause shortage. And of course, anti-static mat. Right, only solder circuit when it's finalized. If you haven't finalized your circuit yet, I encourage you to use breadboard first. Put all your circuits on top of a breadboard, test it before you transfer it to a PCB to your circuit board. All right, because once you solder it, it's more or less permanent. And if you need to readjust your circuit again, it's very difficult for you to remove your circuit one by one. And there's a chance that you will destroy your components that you use in your soldering pad, because when you apply heat constantly as you remove the component, it's going to destroy the component or reduce the effect of this component. So advise to use breadboard before transfer your circuit to a more permanent solution. Okay, when your soldering iron is black, it means that there is burn flux. If it's black, it means that there's burn flux covered on top of your tip. If it's blue, it means that it's overheated. Either way, it can be fixed, it can be cleaned. Use the flux, use your brass sponge to clean it. Okay, and if it's corrode, you can also use knife to slowly peel off the corrosion and then clean with the same process again. Okay, why do we use all this cone tip, this sharp tip, instead of those flat tip? A cone tip allows you to solder finer components. It's much more recommended for beginners. But if you are a professional, you solder a lot in the production line. Normally, they will use this the flat tip lah, right? They call it the edge tip or something. So that allows you to apply solder on top of the edge, and then when you just bring the solder gun on top of your component, it just directly sits on top. But again, recommended for beginners to use a cone tip. And pre-tin wires means apply tin on top of the wires. And then let me see what else I need to highlight. Not too much solder because it may cause shortage. And then yeah, I'm getting questions. What happens if the corroded part won't come off? If the corroded, when you scrape it off, you can use 600 grit sandpaper to slowly scrape it off. Slowly scrape it off. You don't want it to go too deep. This is not really recommended in the soldering world, but if it's really corroded and you can't really save it, you try to use 600 grit solder sandpaper to slowly remove it. Knife, if it doesn't work, use sandpaper, slowly remove it. You just want it to expose some of the metal so that you can apply lead and then let the lead do the cleaning for you. Let the flux do the cleaning for you. Recommended to use high temperature so that you can solder it faster. You don't want low temperature and apply your heat on top of a component for a very long time. No, don't do that, because there's a chance that you will destroy your component. You want it to be fast. let in, solder in, done. All right, you want it to be fast in and then done. You don't want it to put it there for like 10 seconds and then your lead go in and then another 10 seconds. Your component is going to get burned, especially capacitors. We don't encourage you to heat up your capacitor so hot, right? It's going to, because capacitor inside, there's liquid inside and then it's going to boil in there. So no, don't do that. Yep. So again, solder comes in different prices, and we recommend that you get a cheap one for practice. It will last you a lifetime if you know how to protect it. The process is clean your tip first, solder, and then clean your tip after you finish. Leave your soldering iron to cool down naturally. Don't take your soldering iron and put it in the water. All right, don't put it in the sudden low temperature and cause it to, right, high temperature. You shouldn't put it low temperature, and then it's gonna cause corrosion faster and it's gonna break it even easier. All right, so that's all I have for today. I hope you learned something. I'm sorry I take more than I should, take more time than I should, but yeah, I hope you learned something today. I'm gonna share this in our Telegram group. Okay, let me share our Telegram group. If you're interested to learn what type of soldering iron you should get, what type of setup you should have for your makerspace, do join our makers gathering group. Ask our professionals there. And if you're interested in 3D printing, you can drop into our 3D printing community group as well in our Telegram. Just scan this link and then join our group over there. We do a lot of sharing sessions. If you have questions about all this, you can also join us and ask us over there. Again, I'm sorry that I don't have a magnifying glass to show you a more detail on how you solder, but these are just some of the tips that I want you to understand, that soldering is not as scary as you think. It's simple, it's safe, as long as you follow the protocol. And yeah, thanks for joining again. If you have any comments, any feedback that you would like me to you would like us to know, or you want to see in our future session, please drop your feedback in this link. You can scan it. I'm gonna drop it in our comment section here. All right, hold on. And again, if you are interested in what kind of set that I'm using right now, this is the set that I'm using. I also drop it in the comment section. This is the set that I'm using. Okay, the set that I'm using. It comes with a multimeter, two tweezers. Apparently, tweezers, you need it for small components. And then it comes with a wire cutter, and it comes with a set of soldering tips. But again, I recommend you to use the cone tip first. That's default. And then it comes with electric tape. Yeah, a lot of things. Do check it out. All right. So thank you guys for joining. I will see you in our next session. I hope you find this interesting. And yeah, thank you again. Thanks, everyone. Bye.